There is a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being without people. It comes from being surrounded by them and still feeling utterly unreachable. If you've ever found yourself desperately craving closeness while simultaneously doing everything in your power to create distance, you already know this particular kind of pain. It is one of the most confusing, exhausting, and quietly devastating emotional paradoxes a person can live inside of, and yet it is far more common than most people ever admit out loud. This is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you are broken or unlovable or incapable of real connection. It is at its core a survival strategy, one that made perfect sense at some point in your life, even if it is slowly dismantling the relationships you now want most. To understand why you do this, we have to go back, not to blame the past, but to understand the architecture of the person you became because of it. Most people who carry this pattern grew up in environments where love felt unpredictable. Perhaps you had a caregiver who was warm one moment and cold the next, present in body but emotionally unavailable. Perhaps love in your household came wrapped in conditions, and you learned early on that getting too close to someone meant handing them the power to hurt you. Or maybe someone you trusted completely walked away without explanation, and your nervous system took careful, detailed notes. It decided, quietly but firmly, closeness is a threat, and so it built walls. Psychologists often trace this pattern back to what is known as anxious avoidant attachment, sometimes called the fearful avoidant style. Unlike people who are purely anxious in relationships and cling to others, or purely avoidant and keep the world at arm's length, fearful avoidant individuals are caught in a relentless tug-of-war between both impulses at once. You want love. You also terrify yourself with the thought of it. And so you do the only thing that feels safe. You want it from a distance. In everyday life, this plays out in ways that can be deeply confusing, both to you and to the people trying to love you. You might meet someone wonderful and feel a rush of warmth and possibility, and then, almost without realizing it, start picking apart everything they do. You cancel plans. You go quiet for days. You send mixed signals that even you cannot fully decode. When someone gets close enough to matter, something in you sounds an alarm. And instead of sitting with the discomfort of that alarm, you pull the emergency brake. You push them away before they can leave because some part of you is utterly convinced that they will. This is the cruelest logic of this pattern. The very act of protecting yourself from abandonment often creates the abandonment you feared. When you withdraw, people pull back. When you test someone's love by behaving in ways that make it difficult to stay, many of them eventually go. And every time that happens, the original wound gets confirmed. See, says the voice in your head, this is exactly what always happens. This is why you can't trust anyone. This is why you must always be the first to leave. What makes this even more painful is the shame layered on top of it. You are not oblivious to what you're doing. In quieter moments, you can see the pattern clearly. You watch yourself sabotage something good and feel helpless to stop it, as though you are a passenger in your own life, watching yourself through glass. That helplessness breeds self-criticism. You call yourself difficult, toxic, undeserving of the love you so desperately want. But shame never fixed a wound. It only drives it deeper underground. It is important to understand that the pushing away is not random cruelty or emotional immaturity. It is a regulation strategy. When the emotional temperature of a relationship rises, when intimacy deepens, when vulnerability is required, when someone begins to truly see you, your nervous system becomes overwhelmed. It does not have the tools yet to tolerate that level of closeness without panicking. So it does what it was trained to do. It creates distance. It manufactures conflict. It finds an exit. Not because you don't care, but because you care so much that your whole system goes into overdrive. This also shows up in the relationships you choose. People with this pattern often find themselves drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, people who can never fully commit, who are inconsistent, who keep them at arm's length. On the surface, this seems counterintuitive. Why would someone who craves closeness choose someone incapable of providing it? Because Familiarity feels like safety, even when it isn't. An unavailable partner recreates the emotional landscape of childhood. It keeps longing alive without ever requiring you to risk true vulnerability. It is painful in a way that is at least recognizable. Understanding all of this is not the same as being resigned to it. This is where something important needs to be said. These patterns are not permanent. They are learned, and what is learned can, with time and care and the right support, be unlearned. The brain is far more plastic than we once believed, and the nervous system can genuinely be retrained. Not overnight, not without discomfort. But it can be done. Healing for people who carry this pattern often begins with the most basic and most radical act, tolerating closeness in small doses without running. That means noticing the impulse to withdraw and pausing before acting on it. It means learning to name what is happening inside you. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm scared this person will hurt me. I want to push this person away right now. And offering that honesty to someone you trust, including eventually the person you are in relationship with. That kind of vulnerable disclosure is terrifying. It is also the very thing that begins to rewire the pattern. Therapy particularly approaches rooted in attachment theory, somatic work, or EMDR can be profoundly helpful here, not because a therapist will fix you, but because the therapeutic relationship itself becomes the training ground. You learn, often for the first time, what it feels like to let someone in and have them stay, to be messy and scared and human in front of another person without being abandoned for it. That experience, repeated over time, begins to build something new in you, evidence that closeness can be safe. That vulnerability does not always end in loss. And perhaps most importantly, this journey asks you to grieve the younger version of you who needed someone to stay and didn't have that. To grieve the relationships that the pattern may have cost you. To sit with the sorrow of having wanted connection so badly while simultaneously being unable to let it in. That grief is not weakness. It is the beginning of release. You are not doomed to this cycle. The fact that you can recognize it, the fact that something in you aches at the distance between who you are and who you want to be, is itself evidence that change is not only possible but already underway. The longing you feel is not a curse. It is a compass. It is pointing you, however haltingly, toward the very thing you've always deserved. Love that doesn't require you to be perfect, and connection that doesn't require you to disappear. That love exists, and slowly, gently, you are learning to let it reach you.